This is also Halloween mask. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Overcoming Math Anxiety. Our speaker is a professor emeritus from Santa Ana College, Cheryl Ooten. Her talk will be on ways to help math students who are discouraged, overwhelmed, and anxious as if math were a vicious wolf, the big bad wolf, huffing and puffing and blowing their grades down. Cheryl has taught math for over 30 years and is also a licensed psychotherapist. Maybe I need some psychotherapy for wearing this. Cheryl has written a book, Managing the Mean Math Blues. It's an absolutely wonderful book. It's sold in our bookstore. It's used by our math faculty. And it's an absolutely wonderful book for test-taking strategies, lowering anxiety levels, how to study math, how to read a math book, all sorts of wonderful techniques. A perfect blend of someone who's both a psychotherapist and a mathematician. For her lecture, students or participants of this lecture are asked to take a short quiz before the presentation begins. So I hope you've all filled out that true-false quiz. After an explanation of brain potential and how the brain works, a working model of math anxiety will be presented that enables you to take specific actions for success in math by changing your behaviors and thoughts about math. Examples of successful math study behaviors that have shown to be effective through actual research will be provided. So it is a real treat and an honor to present Cheryl Ooten.
Thank you, Sid. This is a great honor and a privilege for me to be at Glendale Community College. I spent 15 years living in Burbank and North Hollywood before I moved to Orange County. So I've traveled this road many, many times, but never been here. And I was telling Sid that he has a family of mathematicians. Well, I've come from a family of civil engineers. And when I got out of that parking lot and looked over the edge and went, well, that must be the elevator, and oh my gosh, that must be the campus down there, I thought, my family has to see this. This is incredible. I spent 22 years at Santa Ana College, and it was flat. So this is very fun for me, and I appreciate being able to come and share some of my thoughts and ideas about math. We all know as math teachers and math students and counselors that it's tough to get through the math for a lot of people, and there are a lot of things that can be done that can make that not necessarily easier, but doable. So where I would like to begin is I would like to talk a little bit about the brain. They used to believe, when I was a lot younger, they used to believe that when you got to be about 27, your brain cells started dying off and you didn't get any more. And what they've known now in the amazing research that they've done in that field is that we actually do grow new brain cells. In fact, they found that brain cells are not only in your brain, but they're all over your body. So forget about the mind-body split, it's just everywhere. And what I like to know about the brain and about these neurons is that the way that we learn something, the way that we experience life, the way that we know something is through neural networks. And basically what happens is when we learn something new, the neuron sends out these little guys called dendrites. And they attach to or sort of connect at the synapse with dendrites from another neuron. Well, when you are in class, what happens is that you learn something new, you have a very tenuous dendritic network that is built up. If you sit there and the teacher's just said something and you've got this kind of network going in your brain, and you sit there and you go, well, I wonder if it matches this, or if I wonder if it has anything to do with that, or I wonder this, and maybe you ask a question, or maybe you work a problem, or maybe you write part of it down. What happens is your brain travels that network again. And then maybe the teacher says, okay, now work this problem and share it with your with your seat partner, and then again you travel that neural network, and then you walk outside and you say, oh, you know, did you know that blah, 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 to your friend, and you travel that neural network again. You go home, you do your homework, you teach the dog how to do it, you do whatever. You keep traveling that neural network. And eventually what happens is that dendritic connection, if you travel it long enough and enough times, it myelinates. It gets coated with a coating called myelin, and you get to keep it for a while, for longer term. That's what they talk about when they talk about putting it into long-term memory. That's what you're doing. So when you're learning math or you're learning any subject that you know, you are making dendritic networks. And that's what I like to think about. It's not about memorizing the stuff you need to know. It's about making these networks and maintaining those networks. If you don't maintain them, they go away. And I'll come back to a lot of this along the way. One other little piece that I want you to know is that after 60 years of brain research, Professor Peter Anakin said this. He said, no human yet exists who can use all the potential of his brain. It is unlimited. Those 10 billion neurons that we have make an incredible number of connections. Each one of them can make 10 with 24 zeros after it, that many connections. And what that means, again, is that not only are you producing new neurons, but you have an unlimited potential to continue learning. They used to think that people that were my age, which is about 64, they were done. You know, their brain, they lost those neurons and they were done. And at 64, you were all washed up and you could just forget about it and maybe sit around and watch TV or whatever. But they now know that people that are my age and 70 and 80 continue to make new neurons. They continue to make new pathways. Their potential is unlimited. Here's the trick. The trick is, how do we reach our potential? That's the challenge for all of us, is to reach our potential. And the way that I think about it is, I think about, for each one of us, it is a very different thing. It's a very different thing. It's a lifelong exploration. Sid and I had a chance to talk a little bit before we came in here. And so I know a little bit about his process of learning over the years and exploration, and the paths, some of the paths that he has followed, and some of the ways that he learns and knows things. Each one of us has a different path, and it is very important for us to recognize that we're different and to continue that exploration. And that's how we begin to reach just part of our potential. Okay, we're going to talk about math anxiety. And this is a very workable definition that I like to use for math anxiety. So we can use some of the things that we know now about the brain with this too. Anxiety comes from being required to stay in an uncomfortable situation over which we believe we have no control. And the three words that I've underlined here are really, really important. When I work with students, when I think about anxiety, when I think about writing about it, I think about these three words: required. Anxiety comes from being required. And what we want to remember as students and as teachers about our jobs is that, you know what, we're not required to be here. This is a choice. The more that I wake up in the morning and say, I choose to get up and I do whatever, or the more I walk into my office or into my classroom and recognize that I am now making a choice. I could be a lot of other places. I could do many other things, but I am making a choice. That's going to make a difference in lowering anxiety. If that's an issue that we have, our anxiety lowers as we recognize the choices that we have and don't make them requirements. If we say, I have to do this, oh, I have to go do my homework. No, hey, wait a minute. I choose to do my homework. It's going to lower the anxiety. We're going to feel better about it. What we believe, and in math, what we believe about math is important too, and that affects the anxiety level. And that's why I asked you to take this little true-false quiz about your belief system that we'll get to later. And also control. The more that we can take charge of what we're doing, the lower our anxiety level is. Okay, picture me. It's 8 o'clock this morning, and I know that I have to drive all the way from Costa Mesa to Glendale College, and I have to be here at a certain time, and I've never been here. What do? I have a map. Last night I sat down with my map. I took charge of that. I found out last night that I had a map to your other campus, the one on Garfield. So luckily, I sat down and went, wait a minute, these streets are not matching up, okay? That's what we do. We have to take charge. So at least this morning when I'm on the freeway going, well, I can't control the traffic, but I certainly control knowing where I'm going to go. That's my control. It lowers the anxiety level. Okay, what are some of the symptoms of math anxiety, what I also call the mean math blues? Anybody throw some out? Symptoms of math anxiety. Tears? Okay. What? Can't hear. Whining, okay.
Freezing up when they're trying to do a math problem.
Okay, freezing up, whining. Avoidance.
Burning of the books.
Yeah, being angry. Yeah. Have any of you ever felt like burning your math book? Yeah?
Throwing it.
Hating it? Okay. What else? Blaming other people. Mm-hmm. Feeling like a failure. Saying I am a failure. What?
Under a test situation, you can have physical responses, nausea, cold sweats.
Nausea, heart palpitations, cold sweats, headache, right? All kinds of those things. Good, excellent. Here's another list. Tension, brain freeze, fear, anger, sadness. It comes in a lot of different ways. How many of you have experienced at least some of these at some time? When I'm working with students, almost everybody raises their hand. Yeah, at least some of these, not all of these. Okay, now what I want to show you is I want to show you a working model from cognitive psychology so that we can go back and begin to work with some of these symptoms and begin to take control to lower that anxiety. Cognitive therapists believe that we are all a product of our thoughts. Our thoughts are our beliefs, the things that we know, the things that we learn, the things that we think, all of those things. Our emotions, which are our feelings or our moods. The body sensations that Liz was saying, the nausea, the heart palpitations, everything that your body senses. And then our behaviors, the things that we do. And what cognitive therapists believe is that all of these things interact with each other. There are interrelationships. Body sensations cause all those three things. Thoughts cause all these three things. There are just all of these interrelationships going on. Well, when you look at this diagram and you know that you want to make some changes, where could we consciously change or begin to bring about change in this diagram? Where would you go? Thoughts and behaviors, absolutely. Absolutely. So, back to the list that we had of symptoms. All of those symptoms that I had listed up here, didn't have yours on my list, but they all fit. All of the things that we said, they're either a thought, they're a behavior, they're a body sensation, or an emotion. And I'm going to show you how this working model works now. Suppose I say to myself, I can't do math. I'm doing my homework, or I'm deciding I'm going to go back to college, I'm going to get a different profession, I'm going to educate myself, I'm going to get really good at something, and I say, can't do math. Well, what'll happen? I may be frightened by math when the counselor says, well, you will need to take this math course, or you will need to take, so much math. My stomach might tense every time I see numbers. I might avoid numbers. I definitely won't be sitting around practicing those numbers, practicing math. If I'm saying I can't do math. But if I change that one thought, and I say to myself, actually, I can do some. I mean, who among us cannot count? We can count, right? We know that that's a circle. We know that that vent up there is a square. We know that this screen is a rectangle. We know that for the moment, this is the front of the room, that's the back of the room. That's all math. You know what? It's too late to say I can't do math. I can do some. How did I learn it? Well, I don't know, but I did. If I can learn some math, maybe I can learn more math. And we begin that changing that thought, reframing that thought begins to change these other three elements of who we are. We might go, oh, okay, take a deep breath, write down a problem if we're in a class and a possible solution, get some help if we need it. We may feel a little bit of relief. I can do some. I did learn that. I can make progress. I go back to what I know, and then I move on from there. We may be curious about what else we can learn. We might just sort of recognize, we do know a lot more than we do. And you know what? I talk to so many people about their math skills, and when they find out I taught math, and it's sort of like, oh my God, excuse me, I can't get away from you fast enough. Because they say, well, I don't remember my algebra. A very educated person, I don't remember my algebra. Hey, you know what? If you don't use your algebra for a lot of times and you think a long time and you think about these other things, you're not gonna remember that. Like, do I care? I don't care, unless you're my student. But we all know a lot of math that we don't give ourselves credit for. We know how to manage money. We know, we use it all the time. We use it in many, many ways. People that know a lot about sports, they know about RBIs. People that are musicians, they play those quarter notes and they do fractions all the time, and they don't even give themselves credit for it. They don't recognize it. So we can all do a lot more math than we really give ourselves credit for. Okay. So what I want to talk to you for the rest of this time is I want to talk to you about changing behaviors and changing thoughts, because that's where we can go if we want to change the anxiety. We want to go to our behaviors and to our thoughts. And I'm going to give you the best that I know from a lifetime of experience. By the way, one of the reasons that I sort of went along this path of math anxiety was that at the University of Kansas about, 40 years ago, I took a class called Uniform Spaces. And up until that time, math was my favorite subject. I was going to do math the rest of my life. It was exciting. I loved it. But I went into this class called Uniform Spaces, and I never figured out what a uniform space was. It was not a good experience. It was one of those times when, how your brain feels like cotton, and you go in and the professor's voice comes from way far away, and you can hardly wait to get out of there. I mean, and when do you do your homework? Well, you're not going to do it right away because you don't want to think about it. And then you wake up and go, oh my gosh, it's Tuesday morning. I have to go to class. I haven't done my homework. You start it. Class is in 2 hours. You can't even think because now you're terrified because you have to go to class. It was not a good experience. In the long run, it was a good experience because it put me on the road to going, well, geez, that was pretty awful, and I know my students are having those kinds of experiences, and what could we do differently? But I'm here because of that experience primarily. So these are things that I have learned in the classroom as a teacher, in the classroom as a student, in the research and the work that I have done since then in the last 40 years. So let's talk about behaviors first of all. The best thing that you can do if you're taking a math class and you want to change your behaviors is to begin to set short-term goals. I am retired from Santa Ana College. I am also in a PhD program at Claremont Graduate University, and this semester I'm taking a wonderful positive psychology class from a man named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is the man that coined the term flow, and flow is really about being engaged in something. It's being like right there and being with it. It's what sports people call in the zone. And his research, which has been going on for a long, long time, and it's still going on. The guy's over 70 years old, and he's still right there in the classroom teaching and having a great time and doing research. But his research says that if you want to be engaged, first of all, you have to get at the right level. The right level. So in math, we want to be at the right level. We want our skills to match the challenges of the class. And then you have to stay at the right level. Okay? Stay at the right level. That's a dynamic process. Because you know what? Every day we're going to be getting some new information. We're going to be learning something new. And we're either going to have to push those skills up or those challenges are going to overwhelm us. If our skills are higher than our challenges, we're bored. If the challenges are way higher than our skills, then we're anxious. And what he noticed in all of his research was that people that were engaged have this little set of short-term goals going on. They've got a new goal all the time. They're setting new goals, and they're getting feedback about whether or not they're doing the right thing. So this is the key. If you're a student and you're in a class and your only goal is I've got to pass this math class, or I'm at Glendale Community College so that I can get a job, or so that I can get a degree, or so that I can get a 4.0 or whatever. If those are your only goals, every time you don't understand what's going on in the classroom, you're at odds with your goals. Because by golly, you know, you've got to understand that if you're going to get out of here or you're going to pass that class. So what you have to do is you've got to go back and make that big long-term goal into little tiny things. Things that you can do, things that you can enjoy doing, things that you can be in control of. So, I thought this was kind of fun. Danica Patrick was the first woman at 26 to ever win an Indy car race. And in Oprah magazine just recently, guess what? She advises you to use short-term goals. This is what she said. She says, I recommend that anyone trying to achieve a big goal first find out what it takes to get there. Then break it into smaller tasks. No challenge is completely overwhelming if it is broken down properly. You just need, that's a big just, you just need to identify the key pieces and tackle them individually. Get quality information and find reputable people to help you. For my own goal, I love this. For my own goal, I needed to work on my driving skills. I mean, hello. I needed to work on my driving skills and my physical conditioning, my mental conditioning. I also needed to align myself with quality sponsors and a quality team. It takes all of these pieces working together to make it in auto racing. It takes all of those pieces together to make it in the math classroom too. And then she says, once I know I've done everything I can to prepare, I visualize myself succeeding, and then I pray. So it's only after she's done all of those other things that she sits back and goes, okay, you know, now I'm gonna visualize my success. So I was pretty impressed. Okay, so we're talking about behaviors. We're talking about short-term goals that can be successful, and I thought I would share a little bit from my own research and from research in student success. I did a study of over 800 Santa Ana College intermediate algebra students, and it turned out that the higher their course grade was, the more likely they did these things, the more likely these were their actions. They completed their homework, and they completed their homework immediately. I kind of think this probably meant I start my homework immediately. Well, let's talk about, and they asked questions in class. Let's talk about what would that do for their learning. Go back to the brain cell model. Every time they worked on their homework, they would be practicing those neural networks, okay? They would be setting those neural networks, making them stronger. Why would you want to start on that homework immediately? Because the little neural network that you made in class about the information that was done in class that day, it's pretty tenuous. And if you don't do anything about it for a week, like I used to not do anything about it in uniform spaces, guess what? It goes away. So immediately is a good thing. Just even if you can find 10 or 15 minutes to sit down and maybe not do all the homework, but to begin the homework and to go over your notes, that will help you keep that neural network going. So these are successful strategies. By the way, the strategies that from now on that are up here in the PowerPoint, they are in the handout that you've got. So they're all written down for you. Not that I notice anybody writing like crazy, but you never know. Okay, this is from research on student success that was done by a lot of different math teachers. These are strategies that earned students higher grades, learning study skills, learning how to study math, talking to different people about what works for them, trying different things that work for you, doing your homework and taking quizzes, even if you're the one that's making up the quiz, or you may talk to your teacher and say, maybe we want to have more quizzes because that will help you get better grades. Why? Because you're practicing that neural network. Immediate feedback. Feedback is timely input, immediate input about whether what you think is going on is really going on. So feedback is very, very important. Again, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, my teacher, the university psychologist, says that feedback is one of the very important things. You need to know whether you achieve your goal or not, or whether what you understand is what's really going on. Getting to know your teacher, that's also a valuable thing. That helps you feel more in charge. You've got a connection there. You know more about what's going on in the class. Tracking your grade, that's important too. Keeping track of what's going on. Attending daily, involving yourself in the classroom. Joining a cohort group. If there's any possibility where you can get into a group where there are students that are in different classes together, that is a good thing. The students that were in cohort groups got better grades. Take math courses every semester. That means once you start, you don't want to go, oh, this semester I think I'm going to take a semester off and I'll take my math again next semester. What happens to all of those neural networks while you take your semester off? They go away. And guess what? When you go back in next semester, you are not going to remember the stuff that you learned in beginning algebra and now you're in intermediate algebra. So taking your classes one after another till you're done is a really good thing. Here's another list of behaviors that I'm not going to go over because I wrote them out. They're in detail. You've got them in your handout, but this is just a useful list that I put as an epilogue in the Managing the Mean Math Blues books, and I thought you might like to have that. These are successful strategies that work. And there's a whole list of 14 of them in your handout. So now I want to talk to you about taking charge of your thoughts, taking charge of your thinking. And I want to teach you a method that I learned as a marriage and family therapist. It was one of the very beginning little techniques that we learned. And I have found it not only useful when I did work as a psychotherapist, but useful in my own life and useful for students. It's called reframing. Cognitive therapists believe that we have what they call automatic negative thoughts. And how many of you that are students feel like you have automatic negative thoughts? A lot about math, okay? So we're going to talk about what can you do with those things. And of course, one of them is that you can reframe them. So, well, what is a reframe? It is something that can change your experience. If I say I can't do math, and I change that thought, I can't do math, to I can do some math, I can learn more, I don't need to get it all right now, that's a reframe. It's changing it, it's changing it, it's still true, it changes our outlook, it changes the context. What is a reframe? It's a restatement of a thought. It alters your perspective. It kind of messes with your head in the way that you're looking at things. It interprets the context or the environment in a new and different way. It's as logical and true as the original thought. Now, here what I want to do is I want to throw in a little caveat that this is not about positive thinking. If I say I can't do math and I'm going, oh, I'm going to be a Pollyanna here, I'm going to be a positive thinker, my students sort of go, oh, well then I just go, I can do math. And then the first problem that they come up against that they can't do, well, that shoots that. So I like to think of this, instead of going from the negative to the positive, I like to just talk about neutralizing. Let's just see if we can get rid of the negativity. If I say I can't do math and then I can do some math, that's realistic, right? That's realistic. And, I'm standing here with a master's degree, a bachelor's and a master's degree in math, and one time one of my students said to me after a geometry class, he said, once you get through algebra and geometry, that's about all the math there is, right? And I kind of went, well, no. And I went home and I thought about that, and I thought, well, how am I gonna show him, or what can I say to him that will kind of, dispel that little rumor? So I sat down with my transcripts and I counted up, and the next time I went back to class and I said, well, I actually took 24 math classes after I took algebra and geometry. So there must be a little more math. And then I started thinking about that again when one of my other students was going, oh, you are a math teacher, you must know all that math, and you know all these things, and it's just so amazing, and I shouldn't even talk to you. And I finally said, you know what, wait a minute. If this is all of math, if this is all of math, the math field, I think maybe I know about that much. And she went, whoa, you can't, this can't be possible. And I said, actually, come with me. And I took her next door to talk with Marianne Anthony, who is also a math professor at Santa Ana College, and she's got not only her master's in math, but she's also got a master's degree in statistics. And I said, Marianne, we're having this little discussion in my office. I don't think she's going to believe me, but I just thought I would come and ask you, if this is all of math, how much do you know? And Marianne's great with students. She's great. She's a great colleague. I loved her. And she went, gee. And she thought about it for a little while, and pretty soon she said, about that much. So what does a reframe do? What is that I can't do math? It's I can do some math for all of us, right? Yeah, even those of us that are math teachers, we know a lot. You know, we know a lot more compared to the people that are sitting in our algebra classes, but there's a whole lot out there that we don't know, a whole lot out there. And that's actually pretty exciting. And as long as you see it as exciting and recognize that your whole life, no matter what you know, somebody else is going to know a lot more, then it's okay. But I don't want to flip to the positive side where it's like I can do all math. So, on with reframes. What can a reframe do? It can affect your attitude about things. It can change your feelings about an event. It could change your feelings about your math class. Remember that behavior causes emotions to change. Thoughts and behaviors cause emotions to change. A reframe can change your feelings about an event. It neutralizes the negativity if you want to, and it can also change a negative victim position into an ownership position. A passive position into, I can take charge of this and I can make a difference here. So we're going to, the rest of the time, got about 10 minutes, we're going to talk about different examples of reframing. The classic example of a reframe, you already know it. The glass is either half empty or the glass is half full. Okay, that's a reframe, the one we all know. Here's one that I just find it very amusing. I hope that you find it a little bit funny, but it's a great example of a reframe. I stole it from a psychotherapist, Donald Meichenbaum out of Toronto. I don't know if he knows that I use it, but I'm going to use it in my next book. Suppose that you've got 3 kids, and they're, between 5 and 10, and you're going to take them to visit their grandmother. The only problem is that you just have a little jalopy that's like this with a little back seat, and it's an old car. It doesn't have the DVD that comes down in front, and it doesn't have the 2 back seats where you can go, oh, you guys need to be separated, so you move into the back seat. So these 3 kids are going to be stuck in that back seat, and oh, by the way, Grandma lives 200 miles away. And you sort of go, oh, this is really going to be fun. Okay, if you expect that you're going to drive all the way to Grandma's house with those 3 kids in the back seat and there are going to be no fights, you have just set yourself up for a pretty terrible trip. But if you say to yourself, if you reframe it and you go, you know what, this is going to be tough. And I'm standing here as a grandma and a mother and a kid. I remember what it was like to be a kid in the back seat like that. It's going to happen, right? They are going to be, poking each other and going, Mom. And so if you say to yourself, okay, I know they're going to be together, and if there's one fight, there's probably going to be one fight every 15 minutes. So if there is only one fight in a half an hour or an hour, hey, you're ahead. You knew it was going to happen. You expected it. You were ready to deal with it. That is a reframe. A reframe can change your expectations. It can change your experience. Here's another example. We talked about this before, changing I have to take a math class to I choose to take that math class. Changing a requirement into a choice. Changing I have to study to I choose to study. And I will tell you, I have to do this reframe a lot, because in my class, I'm not a real fast reader, and in my class, I always have a chapter and 3 papers with all these statistics to read every week for my class at Claremont. And I have to talk to myself, because there are days when I go, I'd really rather walk with my friends or go see my grandkids or, anything but sit down in my study and read all those papers. What am I doing? I'm 64 years old. Why am I doing this? I choose to do that. Yes, exactly. It's a choice that I make. And then I go in there and I go, you know what? This is really kind of fun. I have to go to class, change that to I choose to go to class. And then there's this magic word, yet. This is such a great word. I wish that we could frame this word and put it in every math classroom in the whole country. Yet. I can't do this problem. Oh, wait a minute. I can't do this problem yet. What happens? It opens up the possibilities. Right? It opens up the possibilities. We remember that we're just talking about right now, this moment. In another 2 hours, in another day, in another week, I probably will be able to do that problem. Or I could do that problem. I don't understand to I don't understand yet. Sitting in class, what happens? You get a little overwhelmed and you're going, oh, I don't get it. Oh, wait a minute, I just don't get it yet. This is the one thing that I think that gets mathematicians through. Because, maybe the math teachers in this room, they had it real easy and their math classes were all easy and fine and everything. But I can tell you that I studied math harder than I have ever studied any subject in my whole life. And what I would keep telling myself, because I knew that after class, I pretty much wasn't going to get it. And I was going to have to sit down with the book and sit down with the notes and sit down and go over it and over it and over it again. And I would do it because I kept saying to myself, somehow, I just don't understand yet. I just don't get it yet. I'm going to get it. I just don't get it yet. And my first experience in not getting it yet was in uniforms pieces. Okay, I'm not ready for the test. I'm not ready for the test yet. I haven't learned this. I haven't learned it yet. I haven't passed math. I haven't passed math yet. I can't remember this. I can't remember this yet. Magic word. How about this one? Let's work on this one together. You're sitting in class and you're saying to yourself, everyone understands except me. Who would be willing to reframe that? Only Sid? Come on, you guys. Okay.
I'll bet you there are other people just like me. I'm not alone.
Okay. Somebody else. How else could we reframe that?
Nobody gets this.
Why possible? Are you a math? That's right. Are you a math teacher?
No.
Okay. Are you a teacher?
Computers.
Computers. Okay. You've had that experience where you know that what you're going to teach that day is going to be really hard because people have had a really hard time understanding it, and you give your little preliminary talk and you look around the classroom and everybody's just sitting there looking at it and they don't get it, they have no clue, and nobody will say. Everybody's sitting there going, everybody gets it but me. Okay, here are my suggestions. So what? If I don't get it, if I'm the only one that doesn't get it, guess what? I don't get it. And I can ask a question or I can do something later. I can't read. Here's another thing. A lot of times what we do as students and as teachers, we do this too. I can't read everybody else's mind. So I don't know what they're thinking. We need to remind ourselves that we can't do that. And here's a good one. I have thought this before and I was wrong. I will take notes and ask later. I had a couple of these, but I see it's quarter. Do you have quarter of?
It's more like 12.
Okay, so these are in your handout. You can look at these. Because I don't get this now, I never will. That's a good one to practice reframing, and here are some reframes. They're in your handout. I feel like an idiot. I should understand this. Remember that feeling like an idiot doesn't mean that you are one. We frequently feel, stupid or but that doesn't mean that we are. It just means at the moment we're overwhelmed and we don't know what's going on. Snicker, snicker, yes. Okay, back to that little quiz. What I want to tell you about the quiz that you took is that every one of those is false. If you marked any true, there's a place where you can begin to look at your belief system about math. And now I'm gonna have like maybe 6 minutes where you can ask questions, and if anybody has a question about one of those, or wants to talk to me about it afterwards, or wants to read in the book what I think about that, that's one place that you can begin to change your thoughts, your thinking about math. So what I want to just leave with you is to overcome math anxiety. You need to take charge of your success by choosing to change thoughts with short-term goals, thoughts with reframing, and behaviors with short-term goals. Thank you. And we'll have some questions now.
Questions. Please take advantage and ask some questions.
Yes.
Did you choose to leave out any reference to external circumstances? The presentation is very internally focused.
Did I choose to what?
To leave out any reference to external circumstances, circumstantial.
You know what? That's a really, really good question, because the cognitive model that I gave you, their background is to put it onto the environment, and that we don't, we're not in control of everything at all times. There's a lot in our environment that affects us, and I was kind of focusing on internal, but that's a really good point. Yeah. Yes.
Number 9 on the quiz is interesting. I was wondering if you could clarify that.
Number 9 is?
The idea of not necessarily skipping ahead to the highest level that you can do.
Yeah, that comes from my days as the math department chair at Santa Ana College, when students would take the placement test, and then they would come in and they'd say, I know I scored this score on the placement test, but I've already had all these courses, so I think I should be able to take this class. And that's not my recommendation. My recommendation, again, is that you go back to where your skill level is. I just last night, I was talking with my daughter on the telephone, she's an engineer, she's a civil engineer with a master's degree in civil engineering. And she said, Mom, it was such a great thing when you suggested that I go back and take calculus over. She took AP calculus in high school, she went away to college. She passed the AP class. She could have gone right into third semester calculus. And I said, you know what, honey, if I were you, I would go back and I would take those first 2 semesters over. It gave her a really good grounding. She understood the calculus really, really well. And I'm not so sure she would have if she jumped into a new book in a third. So that's what that is. Does that help? Okay. Yes.
Have you done any studies to see whether students who have gone through a math anxiety class and have been exposed to this actually do go on and are more successful with math?
Yeah, good question. Our numbers have been so low in the actual math anxiety classes that it's been difficult to do that.
And that's a perfect opportunity. Math 190 is our math anxiety class. It's 1 unit, credit, no credit, 8 weeks, and it starts tomorrow. Perfect timing, and it's from 2 to 4:12, and it's taught by Liz Russell.
If I may, I've taught this class several times, and the numbers are relatively low, so it has to be anecdotal. But I frequently have students, and you that will come back to me afterwards and say, "Do you remember me? I always did your math anxiety." And I go, "Of course I remember you." And they'll go, I'm going to do it. I'm making it. Now, a lot of times those students, some of them struggle. So it's not easy for them, but it tends to give them a little bit more persistence. Just knowing that they're not alone, And if they don't give up, they'll make it. So it's not a magic potion, and all of a sudden, boom, they're whizzes. But I think it really does help them help them have the perseverance that they need.
Yeah. Last week I was at Orange Coast College doing the same workshop, and in the hallway I met a woman that said, oh, I was in your math anxiety class 10 years ago, and now she's in charge of the CalWorks program at OCC, and she's got her degree. So that's one. Yes.
For those of us who are teaching, of course, like I teach physics, for example, and there's a lot of math. What would you suggest in terms of passing this information to the students? Like when I'm teaching and I see people are looking a little nervous, how can I, get them to relax?
Well, you could give them this little true-false quiz in the beginning, and you could talk about, what they think about math, or you could try any of the little things that we've talked about, or you could reframe the word yet. A lot of times I'll just tell kind of a stupid story about somebody else I have. One of my favorite stories is about a student I had at the University of Kansas who thought he was really, really smart. And I was actually teaching a class where he did really, really well. The next time I saw him, he was with his calculus teacher. He was crying. He acted, like he knew everything, and he didn't. And my take on it was that he had such an attitude going that he couldn't afford to give it up and begin to ask questions when he needed to ask. So sometimes I tell that, especially if I have a student that acts like that in my class, and they'll come up and they'll say, that's sort of how I was thinking. I would also talk to other teachers and see what works for them, because I've gotten a lot of really good ideas from other teachers.
Sandy?
Hi, I'm a counselor, and I notice there's a lot of counselors and people and disabled students and stuff. But I encouraged all the counselors to come to the workshop, and I noticed there's a lot of other teachers that are already in the field, which is good. But I think that sometimes the counselors, when we teach study skills in classes like that, orientation, we emphasize the English, study skills, test taking. Because I think that a lot of the counselors are also math anxious, or not everybody, but we're the kind that says, "Oh, I just made it through statistics so I could get my master's in counseling."
Yeah, see,
so
that's
I was
where
thinking that we need to have like this kind of workshop for the counselors.
but that,
Sandy, I agree.
Invite people, because if you invite, nobody's going to come because some of them are anxious too.
See, that's where I think we need a big reframe. Rather than I just barely made it through, I made it through. They learned stuff. They did make it through. And that's important.
You could come to ours and then we could not do the same thing.
Paul?
I simply would like to remind that while pursuing short-term goals, you should never forget what your long-term goal is.
Yes.
That helps a lot.
Thank you. That's very important.
And time for
one, and I'll answer yours
sure.
later.
Based on the cognitive model, it's how we learn as a function of the creation and the maintaining the networks. Is it better to learn math in a mixed review sense, where you're learning some of the same topics every day, versus the isolated way where you learn one topic, whatever, linear equations, and then you move on to polynomials, and then you move on to, is there evidence that maybe to build these networks and make them stronger, that you're learning?
I believe there is. And what I know from my own experience is that once I began to have every one of my chapter tests be cumulative, and once I would continue to go back and maybe put a problem a day that was a review problem, and force them to go back and review that I had more people pass the final exam and understand.
As a matter of fact, I keep telling my calculus class the 3 R's every morning: read the book, reflect on what you're doing, and continually review.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
So mix in, practice the concepts over and over again.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're out of here, but thank you very much.